Hello guys, and welcome to episode 37 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later, their backlog. I'm your host Adam, and today we are investigating the mystery of the Salami Bandit in Hello Broccoli's charming deDUCKtion game, Duck Detective: The Secret Salami. The game was released on PC, Xbox and Nintendo Switch on May 23rd, and it has been on my wish list since one of the Steam I think it was Steam Next Festival at the start of 2024 because it just looks so fun. I think it also popped up on like a Nintendo Indie Direct as well, because yeah, the thing that drew me to it straight away was the art style, and it just seems like a fun, light-hearted game, and it very much fits into this, this wholesome genre of gaming. Plus, when the game released, it actually had a 10% launch discount on the Nintendo Switch where I played it. And I had been playing Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door at the time. And Duck Detective's art style was obviously inspired by this series. And the Steam page said the game only takes between 2 to 3 hours to beat. Which, by the way, if you're an indie developer and you're planning on releasing a short game, please add that it is a short game to your store page, because that's one thing I always look for, is how long it takes to beat a game. So if the developer comes out and proudly says, okay, yeah, it's a smaller scope game that takes a few hours to beat, that's like a big positive for me. Like the new Horizon game that was announced, the one that's coming to Switch, the Lego one. At first I thought, oh yeah, this game I'm going to skip because it's going to be probably a very long game, even though I was really interested in it because I love Horizon, and I used to love, well, I still do love the Lego games, but I've not played them for a while. But then the developers came out and said, oh yeah, it takes about 7 to 8 hours to beat, and I was like, okay, like the Rick and Morty meme, like I click my fingers and like, damn it, I'm in. Because that's the perfect amount of time that I can spend on a game. So yeah, if you are a developer or you're thinking about making a game soon, make sure you put the length in your description of your game, because that will either turn a lot of people on or maybe turn a lot of people off. But I think it will, for shorter games, for people like me, it will definitely turn them on to it. And yeah, talking about the game and turning people on, it seems critics have been enjoying it too, with it sitting at a generally favourable 79 on Metacritic and an overwhelmingly positive score on Steam with 2,569 reviews. So let's try to quack the case and find out if you should give Duck Detective: The Secret Salami a try. And this is usually where I put in the music track, but I actually can't find where the track is, and I've forgotten the name of it. So this time we'll just go straight into the story. And as you might have guessed by the title of the name, you play as a duck detective called Detective McQuacklin, who is a down-on-his-luck detective with an addiction to fluffy white bread. When he is at his lowest, he is thrown a bone, or should we say a breadcrumb, with a new case at the Bear Bus Depot station. Upon arrival, our detective first has to identify who has hired him and who is stealing his employer's lunch. To do this, you, playing as Detective McQuacklin, must speak to the weird and wonderful Bear Bus workforce, literally judge them by their cover, and try to gain keywords and information to put together your case. However, the more you pry, the more you realise not everything is as it seems at Bear Bus Depot. A conspiracy is afoot, with the puppet master being the elusive Salami Bandit. McQuacklin needs to find the Salami Bandit and their accomplices, whilst also working out who is stealing people's lunches from the kitchen. Otherwise, his dreams of a fluffy white loaf will go stale. And yeah, so it's like we said, it's quite a small scope game, so the whole game takes place within the bus, the Bear Bus Depot, and it's very kind of noir inspired, tongue in the cheek, animal based, obviously, with it being a duck. So yeah, it's a very light-hearted game, and which is why I wanted to play it. Especially, I mean, Paper Mario was also a light-hearted game, but it was quite a long, hefty game. So I was really kind of wanted to get into a game that was a little bit easier to play through, took a little bit less concentration, and that's why I kind of went for Duck Detective. And if we talk about the gameplay, so upon starting the game, it does actually give you two options of how you would like to play. The first is the detective mode, which gives you less clues and prompts to help you in your investigation, and the second is story mode, which gives you more clues and more prompts. And I actually decided to go to story mode because I was actually playing this game as I was on the train to Venice with my wife, And I was like, okay, we're on a train. It's not my ideal situation to play a video game. I also actually injured my hand, so I couldn't play with two hands. So I was playing with the OG Switch in kind of desktop mode with my Joy-Con controller, because I could use with the the Pro controller. Because with the Pro controller, I could play with one hand. Like I could spread my hand out and move the joysticks with my thumb and press the buttons with my my pinky. And also, yeah, this kind of game, it wasn't like a very fast-paced, reaction-based gameplay. It was a lot of just reading and kind of just walking over to people and talking to them. So it was a perfect game to play for that. But I did want to kind of play it in the story mode, because I more or less wanted to finish it in this ride to Venice, which, I actually ended up doing, which was really nice. So yeah, just bear that in mind when I talk about my experience with the game, because I did play on story mode, I didn't play on detective mode. And the game revolves around you exploring the Bear Bus offices, talking to suspects, and investigating points of interest. Talking to suspects will get you keywords out of them that help you fill out your deductions of what is actually going on at the bus depot and who the Salami bandit is. In addition, you can view subjects or items, and it literally you go over them with like a magnifying glass, and as you go over certain areas of a subject or an item, it will show you like a little secret. And it's really cool how they do it, because the art style of the game is very simplistic, kind of like, and very stylized, like Paper Mario. But when you go over certain parts of the character with the magnifying glass, it really like magnifies them and shows you them in more detail, which is a really cool effect. Yeah, it kind of gives you these clues. You know, just looking at the character and what's on them gives you kind of foreshadowing for stuff later on. So, for example, one of the characters is called Rufus, and when you view him, it shows that he has a sci-fi sticker on one of his, I think it's on his toolbox. And then later on, when you find a sci-fi book, you kind of can deduce that this book probably belongs to Rufus, and then that kind of links a few other things within the story. And how the deductions work that they are in the game's menu, and they sort of act like a fill-in-the-word puzzle, with certain words or sentences or paragraphs even being switched to drop-down menus, where all of the keywords or names you've found so far could be an option. And helpfully, the game tells you when you've selected the right keyword in the right position. So you kind of then, have to just kind of work out which word goes where in a sentence. And it's kind of cool, because even if you aren't that good at these sort of puzzles, you can use your own deduction. And if you're not very good at deducting things, you can use trial and error to work out what the sentences or paragraphs say. And once you do, the story progresses onto the next chapter or section, and the gameplay sort of loops like this until you work out who the Salami bandit is. And to be completely honest, I don't think the game did the best job of telling you what the actual story is and what's actually happening. Because a lot of the keywords that you find tended to just be in conversation, like random conversations that didn't really have anything to do with what was happening at the Bear Bus Depot. So what was really happening with the Salami bandit? It might be that you're just talking to a character about something random, and then all of a sudden a random keyword pops up. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, a lot of these detective novels or detective movies or games, when it's usually when they're like cross-examining in a subject that these keywords would pop up. But in this game, it's very much like, oh, no, that you're just having a conversation about something, and about cake, for example, and then one of the keywords might just pop up in the conversation. Therefore, I kind of found it quite hard to follow along with what was actually happening in the story and who the culprits were, because a lot of the stuff just felt random. And it's really isn't helped by the deduction mechanic, because you can, of course, just guess what the missing words are, because the game tells you which ones are correct and which ones aren't. So all you had to do was more or less talk to as many people as possible, and then via the drop down just select which words would make sense in the sentence. So a lot of it was you could just fill out the ones that you got correctly, and then go back through the ones that the game had told you got wrong, and just try different words until eventually it let you kind of pass on. And this is most apparent, I think, in the very final chapter of the game. Because if you talk to everyone first before you go into the deduction menu and try to work out who the baddie is, you basically have all of the words for the last 3 or 4 puzzles. So it means that after you've talked to everyone, you can just complete the puzzles one after the other, without really actually having to think about what is going on in the story, because you know you have all of the words. And I think the game even tells you when you have all of the keywords you need to finish. So it just means you just go into the menu and you just trial and error every single drop down until eventually you get it right. And it's kind of mostly because the character's dialogue doesn't reset after the puzzle. The character's dialogue resets after every chapter. So after every chapter, they have something new to say. So yeah, if at the start of the chapter you just talk to everyone, then you can more or less just skip through all of the puzzles really, really quickly, which was a little bit of like a shame. I thought that you could kind of, do that. But when I was kind of thinking about it, I suppose this is kind of what you would say deduction is. However, I feel a little bit like I was cheating the game because I had talked to everyone. I didn't really know what to do next, so just guessed the puzzles. And like I said earlier, this might have been because I was playing on story mode. So maybe this was kind of my own fault because maybe, I wanted a bit more of a challenge than I actually thought I did. And playing in detective mode, you probably had less options or less, maybe not necessarily less keywords, but maybe less chances to actually work out what it is, and maybe there was then less of an option to do like the trial and error like I did. However, in general, I really don't think the game did a very good job at communicating the story to you so you could put the puzzle pieces together yourself, because a lot of the times, I just kind of put the puzzle pieces together, got out the kind of text that I needed and was like, okay, that's not what the text says, isn't necessarily the vibe I was getting from the story and the characters. And thankfully, at the end of the game, McQuackling summarizes the story in like a very cool, like Polaroid photo on like the pinboard, a piece of artwork that kind of tells you what actually happened and how all of this kind of convoluted characters and story all fit together. And after seeing what actually happened, I was a bit like, okay, like, it felt a little bit overwhelmed and kind of a bit like, all right, if that's what you say happened, fine. It was like a cool experience, but that's not necessarily, I didn't necessarily get this answer or get to this ending myself via playing the game, which was a little bit of a shame. But one thing that I think the game does really well is that they have a really nice quality of life feature where if you look at the game's map, it shows you where missing keywords can be found. So you don't have to feel like a headless chicken or duck, I suppose, looking for them. And one thing that I really wish would have actually helped with the game and helped you maybe have streamlined it a little bit is that when you got all keywords from an object, that the interact icon on the object would have disappeared. Because I had multiple times clicking on objects that I'd already interacted with, thinking that they were new clues. So that would have been a nice little change. But yeah, so that is kind of how the story and the gameplay works of Duck Detective, The Secret Salami. And next I want to talk about the game's presentation, which I think this game does really well. But before we talk about the presentation of Duck Detective, let me remind you that if you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or wherever you're listening. Now, on to the rest of the show. And yeah, though the game might not have nailed the story and gameplay, what it did do really well is its presentation, because the game looks fantastic. It's obvious that the game's art style is based off of the Paper Mario series. However, the game stands out on its own with its 3D isometric environment and then its 2D sticker-like characters, which again is very Paper Mario-like. In addition, the game's character designs themselves are very cool and very creative. Obviously, the Duck Detective himself looks great, and I especially liked the character Freddy, who is a crocodile, and he's like a wannabe sidekick to McQuackling, and Laura, who is an overworked customer service agent. And yeah, in general, I thought the characters having their kind of, anthropomorphic, the characters, they all work in this bus depot together was very cool. They're all very memorable. All of their designs look fantastic. And again, as I said in the Paper Mario review last week, I just love this aesthetic of this kind of 2D, very thick stroke, sticker looking like characters that also, when they turn left and right, it's them like the 2D, like a piece of paper flipping over, just looks so cool. And then again, the 3D environment was awesome. I like that they changed it up a little bit, having an isometric view. And in addition, I really liked how the game tried to keep a noir feel throughout. So at the end of every chapter, the game went to kind of like a, not black and white, but kind of like brown and white, almost like looking like an old newspaper. And McQuackling would summarize everything what just happened to kind of help you realize what is happening in the story. Like I said, I don't think they did this the best way, but I liked how they actually, visualize this rather than just some text at the bottom of the screen. I'm talking about text at the bottom of the screen. One thing that I was really, really surprised about and really pleasantly surprised about is that the game is fully voice acted. And I think, I just assumed that after playing Paper Mario, I was expecting that I would just have to read the text. But no, I could listen along. And I have to say, I think the quality of the voice acting in this game is pretty good. With some indie games, it can be a little bit, iffy sometimes, I think, voice acting. Like when we did the review on Harold Halibut, I said there that some of the characters, some of them sounded really good, but then some of them sounded a little bit like amateur. And I think in this game, the characters that really stood out the actor that really stood out for me was Sean Chiplick, who voices our poultry detective, the duck detective. And yeah, some of the other voices, they kind of, to me, sounded like a German speaker trying to speak English with an American accent. And I think some of Happy Broccoli, their developers are based in Germany. But your mileage might vary if you notice this. I think maybe I notice it because I myself am an English speaker living in Austria, so a German speaking country. So maybe I'm used to kind of like the accents, and maybe other people won't notice. Nevertheless, I was really happy with the voice acting. I thought it added like an extra level of polish to the game. And like I said, it's something that you don't see often. I guess you're seeing it more often now in indie games. But like we said, Nintendo games, they don't really have any voice acting in it, at least the kind of main ones with the main characters like Zelda and Mario. So it was a nice little touch here to just kind of really finished off the polish of the game and just made it feel very kind of premium and high quality. And that is also then elevated via the music, because I think the music in this game is excellent. It's only a short game, so there are only a couple of tracks, but each one fits perfectly to the detective/noir theme, and they're really, really nice to listen to. And if you kind of think of like an easy jazz melody, that's what the soundtrack sounds like. But I suppose the biggest question is, should you check out the game? And for me, Duck Detective The Secret Salami is fun, charming, and feels highly polished. So in my opinion, it is well worth the €9.99 price tag. Especially if you're like me and have just finished Paper Mario and want to play something that looks similar, then I would say check out the game, especially if you want something short and easy to play after that 30-hour JRPG. The game's art is gorgeous and obviously Paper Mario inspired. Its characters are cute, fun and interesting to talk to, and though its story does get a little bit convoluted, it is still fun to be along for the ride for the 2 to 3 hours it takes to finish the game. If you're just looking for a new game to play and don't have the attachment to Paper Mario or want a short game to play, I think I would still recommend Duck Detective and the Secret Salami to you, with the caveat that, right now it's the middle of summer and there are a lot of summer sales happening, so I would maybe wait to see if you can get the game a little bit cheaper. So guys, that was episode 37 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. Are you picking up the Duck Detective, The Secret Salami? And what do you think of wholesome games? Do you think this is a genre that is thriving? Or do you think maybe the genre is getting a little bit saturated? If you're a Spotify listener, Spotify has a new feature where you can actually comment now on episodes rather than answer a question. So if you're a listener, look down. It doesn't work everywhere, I believe, but look down in the description. There should be a little comment box there, and if you have it, please let me know by answering the question, or just let me know that you're listening and say hello, because it would be awesome to see some interaction on the episode. I think this is a great feature by Spotify, and I'm really glad that they're listening to it. And also, if you're listening elsewhere, you can also, of course, let me know on social media by @ing me on at SwitchIndieFix on Twitter/X or BYB_podcast on Instagram. And furthermore, if you're listening, if you're in the mood to listen to more content about a fun 2D indie game, then make sure you check out episode 15 of the podcast about Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. And of course, we've been talking about Paper Mario quite a little bit in this. Quite a lot in this episode, so you can check out episode 36 of the podcast if you haven't done so already. And finally, guys, I want to just remind you that Beat Your Backlog is a new-ish podcast and needs your support. So if you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and or following us wherever you're listening, and leaving a 5-star review, because reviews help new people find the podcast. So it would be wonderful if you could leave us one. Thanks so much for listening.